Hello there, it's Jan here from JB Crafts, and I have another tutorial for you today for my Technique Tuesday series. So I've been running these for a little while now, just showing you lots of different techniques that you can use in your paper crafting, whether it be card making, whether it be journal making, whether it's scrapbooking. These techniques can go across the board with whatever projects you want to put them into. So to come to today's then, this is what I'm going to show you how I've made. And we've gone back to the backgrounds today. As you know, anybody that knows me knows I love making my inky backgrounds, but I've gone a little bit different today and I've used a different product. More often than not, I use my oxide inks. There's a little tiny bit of that crept in here for the extra definition there, but the background is actually made using a watercolour medium today. And then I don't know whether the camera's picking it up or not. There's a slight little bit of gold shimmer in the background as well, and I'm going to show you how I've done that. So we're going to make the background together. I have got one that's currently drying because it is a technique that you need to wait for drying. Obviously within the tutorial I need that to be ready, but I am going to show you how I've arrived at it. I've kept the rest of the design very simple. Little bit of gold shimmer on the flowers. I'll show you how I've made those as well, and just kept it a simple design. And a little bit that I had left over from the top I've just used to add that bit of interest inside. I've also recreated the pattern from here just to link the inside to the outside, and you've got a nice little top fold 7x5 card. Really simple to do. So let me show you what I've used to make my background today then. We're going to start off with a piece of watercolour card today because I'm going to add some more wet mediums to this today. I've got watercolour card, and then I've actually brought out my aqua markers. Now these are actually a water-based pen from Spectrum Noir, and these are brush pens. They're absolutely beautiful. So they are aqua. These are the tricolour aquas. You may have these in individual colours. I have both, but I just pulled my tricolours out today because I tend to find, there's a really nice mixture of colours within these. Now I have all 4 sets of these. There are 4 different sets that come in sets of 3 pens, but each pen has 3 different shades in it. So yeah, depends what you have in your stash. If you have the ordinary aqua markers that are just one colour with the tiny bullet nib and the brush nib, you will still be able to do this technique. Any watercolour marker for that matter. It doesn't have to be a Spectrum Noir marker. It can be any kind of watercolour marker or watercolour ink for that matter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this into a blending ink. So yeah, I've actually pulled out some of these to use, and I've got the one that's missing from here, which has got a nice sort of set of analogous colours in here. We've got a really nice golden yellow, we've got a red tone and an orange tone. Now I've replaced the red with one from down here, and I'm going to pop the pink in the middle. So again, any of you that followed my colour theory series will know that the pink is a tint of the red anyway. So we've still got those nice analogous colours where we've got these 3 that follow each other on the rainbow. You're not going to go sort of very far wrong. We've got the red, orange, yellow rainbow colours, and I'm going to use these to make the background. Now you can actually apply these just by adding water to your card and dipping the ink in, but one of my favourite ways to do these is actually to use them with glycerin. Now this is a product that I buy. You can see there are lots of brands out there, but this is the one where I buy mine from. You can get it from any chemist, and it does want to be that pharmaceutical grade. You can use the one that's prepared for cooking and using with so anything that you eat, but you'll pay more money for the glycerin that they prepare for that. This is just everyday stuff. It's one of the base ingredients in cough medicines and things like that. So glycerol, glycerin, it's the same thing. And these, this one, it is a 200 ml bottle, and I'm just trying to look. I think my glycerin's down to where the label is. What I do is decant it into a small little container here, and you only need the tiniest bit, so that bottle will last for ages. So I have some in here that I'm going to use. I've got my inks that I'm going to use, and then I'm going to bring in some of my sponge applicators, exactly the same as what you would use for blending inks with. And we're going to actually turn the pen ink into a blending ink. So if I was to try and sort of move this around on here, the only way I'd be able to do that would be to add some water to it. So by adding the glycerin to it, it's going to keep that ink what we call open for longer, so it keeps it more wet and allows you to move it round on the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my mat just to protect the desk here. We'll put that down first, and I've also got a piece of white that I'm going to put the colours on so that you can see more what I'm actually doing here. So I've got a dedicated dauber for each colour, the yellow, the orange and the pink. So we're going to use those, and I'll put those down the side here. And then all I'm going to do is pop some of the colour out first. So on my piece here, and this is just a piece of white card that I've laminated so that I can actually work onto it. If you have a glass mat that you work on, you can do it on there. Do it on a piece of acetate or packaging. By popping the white under it, it allows you to see the true colour of the pen there, and it will just sit on top of here, and not even if it stains it, I'm not too worried about it. So I've got the yellow, I have got that lovely sort of almost coral for the orange there, and then I'm just going to flick to the other pen and bring the pink in, really nice bright rose pink there. So just apply some of that onto here. Now it is very warm today in here, so I'm hoping it doesn't dry too quickly on my surface there. And then I'm just going to pop a tiny little bit, you know, it really is just a tiny bit of glycerin for each of those sponge applicators. It's probably the size of a large gemstone that you would put on your work there. And I'm going to take these in order. I'm going to start with the yellow. Now there is a little bit of residue in here because I was working with this earlier. You can see got a bit of the staining on my fingers, so there is a bit of residue. But what you want to do is dab up that glycerin and work it into your sponge applicator until it's all gone off your mat. So this now becomes a carrier for the glycerin, and then you can start and pick up some of this, and then it will behave just like an ink. So just like you would do with your inks, you can now bring it onto your cardstock and move it around. Now the first time I saw this done, I was absolutely fascinated that this was actually ink from a pen. Now, those of you that followed me when I was working for Crafters Companion on Crafters TV, you'll have seen me do this technique before. It is one that I sort of tend to go back to. If I'm not using my inks, this is a really nice one to go back to. So again, I'm just going to pick all that ink up off that surface there, turning this around as I go, and I tend to work in sets of 3. So again, not thinking about it too much, I'm just going to put 3 bands of that lovely rich golden yellow down. We can always come back and add some more when we've finished. Now I am just going to find somewhere hiding under here. I just want my tape there. I'm just going to put some tape over my fingers so that I don't, because this is wet, I don't want to pick it up again. So I tend to just use the purple tape, put it on my fingers, and I've got something to hold this with. So then we're going to come to that lovely coral orange, and again I'm going to pick up that glycerin, work it into that applicator so that you can't see it now on the surface, and again pick up some of that lovely coral ink, and we're going to come in and add that colour, and it just allows it to move around just right up next to the golden yellow. And then we'll rotate and we will put some in here. And don't worry if this does look blotchy. We're going to do so many things to it that by the time we finish with it, you won't notice it is. I always say this, when you're making backgrounds, don't worry about it. Don't get too precious about what it looks like at any given stage, because by the time we've finished, we're going to do so many elements to it that you won't really notice. So again, I'm going to bring a little bit down this corner. I'm just leaving some gaps to add that pink in. And just bringing it over, you get sort of a little bit of a transition between the 2 colours. So again, come to the pink one, pick up the glycerin, work it into that sponge, pick up some of the ink, And then I'm just going to fill in the gaps now. So we're going to bring some into this corner here. I am going to go with that little bit in the middle there. And again, as I say, don't worry about what, you know, whether you get sort of blotches on it or circles on it. Even with the tape, I can still see where it's lifted it slightly here, but we will address that in a second. So again, just popping that pink into the gaps there. And it does look a little bit blotchy at the minute, I agree, but we are going to go sort of work on it a little bit further like we would do if we were using an ink. So I'm going to go back down the colours now. I'm going to go back to my orange one, and where the pink and the orange have overlapped, I am just going to work that a little bit more. So just overlapping them where the edges are. Wherever I've got that pink and orange together. And then I'm going to go back to the yellow, and again where those two meet we'll actually just blend over the top. It doesn't pick up much of the ink on here, so don't be worried about contaminating them. And your little sponges you can run through the wash as well. I keep one of those little net bags for the washing, and I sometimes put all mine in there and just pop them through the washing machine. So yeah, we're just going to blend that out as best we can, like so. And you've got the beginnings of our background, and I say the beginnings because we are going to do some other elements to it as well. We've also almost got two techniques for the price of one today. I'm going to do something else with this as well now, and what I'm going to do now is just try and spray my fingers a little bit, because even though I use the tape I am still covered, but because it's water based I can get the bulk of that off. Okay, just with the water there. So I'm going to move those little daubers out of the way. I will clean that bit up in a second. And this is what we've actually got. So because this is a water-based medium, we know straight away that it's going to react with water. So the first thing that I'm going to do is use my fan brush there with a little bit of water, get that sort of saturated, tap off any excess, and we're going to go with the old splatter technique there, just to add a bit of interest on that background. And I'm going to cut this down to fit my project size, but I always tend to work on a slightly larger piece than I need to begin with. That way you can actually take out a crop from the, you know, the area that you like. It also allows you to have those little bits left over, which is what I transferred to the inside. And then all I'm going to do, the longer you leave this, the better the effect. You can see how it's starting to push that ink around. If I just bring this a little bit closer to you, to the camera, get these gorgeous little patterns in it. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, I think we could do with a few more just in the middle there. I can just see here they were non-landed. I'll probably end up with too many now, but as I say, it's a background. I'm not too worried. And then I'm going to bring in my paper towel and just pop this down onto here. Give it a roll and blot up that excess. And you can just see how it lifts the ink out. So that's the next stage. Now we're going to do a third stage, which is technically the other technique that I've got for you. A lot of techs in there, weren't there? So yeah, we've done the glycerin to mix the ink as one technique. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring in one of my shimmer sprays. And this is a gold one here. This is actually one of the Sheena Douglas sets. It came from the Bella Luna collection, which Crafter's Companion did. And I'm just going to give that a bit of a mix, because it has got mica in there to get the shimmer. It has got a little ball bearing in there just to mix it. Tend not to shake it up and down because I don't want to block the nozzle, so just give it a good roll just to mix, or a swirl to mix that mica in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a piece of, we call this cling film in the UK. I think it's possibly known as shrink wrap. It's basically what you cover food with. So if you'd made a dish of food, you could put it over the top of it. And what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm just going to move that sample out of the way and the piece that we're working on, and I'm going to spray this onto one side of that cling wrap. So I'm just going to give several little sprays that are going to be the size of that piece of card, so that that's now on the cling wrap itself. And then I'm going to bring my piece of card in that we've just worked on and invert this. So I'm going to turn it over, lay it over the top, and then scrunch it up. And the more little wrinkles and crinkles that you can get in here, the better the effect. All right, so really give it a good scrunch. You can see that gold inside, and the idea is that we're going to get a veining in here when it's dry, and then you need to leave that to dry. Now, I work in my conservatory at the moment. The sun's out, it's not going to take long at all, but this one won't quite be quick enough. So I've got one that I was working on earlier that's got to the same stage, so I'm going to swap those over. Just put that one somewhere safe, and I can use that for a different project. Give this a quick wipe so that we don't get covered in the gold, and then we'll do the reveal on this one. Now, it's very, very subtle, but when you bring this off here, first of all, it's made all that lovely veining sort of in the pattern. You can see some of that now. You can just see where we've got this sort of almost like marbled effect, but then when I lift it up to the light, can you see that beautiful shimmer? I hope this is showing up on the camera. It's absolutely stunning. So come a little bit closer and just keep tipping it. It is beautiful. You've got all this beautiful gold vein, and you can do this with any shimmer spray. You know, you could do this with the cool tones and add silver to it. You could actually class it as one of your colours. You could work with maybe the orange and the yellow and then add pink shimmer spray for your third colour. So many different ways of doing it, but just to get that beautiful shimmer on there. And it's almost, as I say, like a marbling. So we've got the colour in the background that actually came out of a pen to start with. Then we've got that lovely lift technique with the water in the background, as well as a point of interest. And then that gorgeous veining with the gold in there. So that's going to be my background, and that's going to be the piece that we're going to work with. So what I want to do is just cut that down to size now. I want to create the background that's the right size for my card blank there. So just pop that over to one side, and I'm going to bring in the guillotine and cut this down to measure 6.5 by 4.5. I want it to cut down to. So I'm just going to take probably a little bit off each end rather than cutting it off, purely because I'd actually worked on that larger piece and I'd spread out those colours. I'm going to take a bit off each side to make the 6.5, and then I'm also going to come and take a little bit off each of the sides again, just to preserve all those spaces so that I have actually got a bit of each colour rather than chopping off one of them. So you can see I've still got all three colours in there. So I think we're okay there. 6.5 by 4.5. Fabulous. And then I've got some simple matte layer to go with it. If I just bring these in now, I've got a shop bought 7x5 inch card. These are out of the craft boxes that I am still working my way through. And then I've got a piece of gold mirror card here, because I'd used the gold spray, and I've cut that down to 6 5/8 by 4 5/8. So I've got a nice sort of white border around the outside of the card, and then this one's just left a little tiny gold border around the edge of here. So the first thing I'm going to do is stick this one onto here. And again, I'm not overly keen on using, normally I reach for my all-purpose glue, but I'm not keen on using that on the shiny surfaces and the coated cardstock. What I'm going to do is just run some double-sided adhesive, or if you've got your tape runner, you can use the double-sided tape runner, but I am literally just going to run 2 or 3 pieces of the tape across the back of this one, which will allow me to stick it together nicely and not worry about damaging that beautiful gold mirror card. Again, if you want to take the center out of your mirror card, if you want to, you know, preserve what you've got left, I seem to have got loads of it, so I'm not too worried about that. But if you wanted to take or die cut something out of the middle of here, you know, you could die cut a rectangle out, you could die cut sentiments out of it before you cover pretty much the whole thing up. So we'll just release some of that backing tape, and again I tend to do it just in stages because it is very, very sticky, and not very forgiving where it comes to sticking things together, which is why I prefer my wet glue. So all I'm going to do is just visualize those little tiny borders, and if I can get 3 of those sides right, the 4th one should fall into place there. And you do have a tiny little bit of time there, and then just very gently, yep, pull out the pieces. That I always end up with one that tears, but we can just sneak in the back there. Which side was it? That one. Sneak in the back and lift the liner and get rid of what was left there. And I find that's a really good way of anchoring it onto the mirror card. So we'll pop that one on there. And then, because we're now going to go cardstock to cardstock, you guessed, we're going to get the all-purpose back out. So wherever possible, it's nearly always a wet glue. Just taking those precautions with a coated cardstock, so like a mirror card or the satin card or a glitter card, something like that. Make sure we've got that the right way. Now then, I nearly did. Let me just turn that over because I want to run a piece of ribbon around there before we actually stick it down. So I'm just going to eyeball where I want that to go, and I will stick it onto that wet glue and anchor it before we actually place that down. So again, just making sure that's near enough, as straight as I can get it, like so. Nearly did. Pop that down on the back. Oops. And then we'll just add a little bit more glue over the top of there. And then we can stick it onto the card. I nearly did. I'm a dab hand at forgetting to pop the ribbon on it when I get so carried away about getting things ready. So that one's going to go on there like so, and then that sentiment is going to anchor it. And then I'm going to turn it over and press it from the back so that I don't disturb any of that mica on the front. So that's sort of the base of the card ready. And again, I've kept very, very simple decorations on it. I wanted to focus on the actual background, so I've just used a die cut, and again, whatever you've got. This is actually from an old Gemini set. Again, it's been out a while. Really pretty nesting dies here. These were the decorative nesting dies if you have them. It's the bergamot, and there are 3 dies in here, and I've used the center one. So again, you can just see all 3 of them here. This is the middle one, and I've just used that to die cut my sentiment, just rather than have something plain. And we're going to bridge that ribbon there with this one. So because I'm going onto that decorative surface that's got different mediums on it, I'm going to bring in the red line tape, and I just want a little bit above and a bit below where the ribbon is, just to bridge either side of the ribbon on the card. So that should work for that. Take that off, and then we can add that onto our card. And I'm going to use the center point here. I've got 3 of these little decorative pieces on each side. So what I'm going to do is use the center one over the ribbon, and then the center one over the ribbon at this side, and then give that a press down. And I've stamped my sentiment to one side just so that I could add a little bit of decoration. And again, I've just created some flowers. I was this was probably one of the longest bits, because I was like, right, do I actually create my flowers out of the gold? So I could have used the satin gold on it. Wasn't keen on that idea. So then I tried to find something that matched in my paper scraps. I didn't want to use exactly the same as the background here. So what I ended up doing was actually bringing out one of my oxide inks that was similar to it was in between the pink and the coral that we used from the pens. Put that on with a brush onto some scrap cardstock, and then spritz that cardstock with the same gold spray. And you can just see now on the flowers, we've got that lovely coordinating colour, but they've also got that lovely gold shimmer on them there. So I've just made a cluster of 3 to go at one side, and then I'm just going to offset that with one at the other side. And again, when I'm using my embellishments, I normally alternate to my acrylic glue here. It does tend to dry a little bit quicker, so a little bit of that on the back here, and we're going to add that big one, beautiful sort of glitzy shimmer on there. And then we've got the next size down at the bottom here, and then the next size, they're going to go in my little cluster like so. I've not added any greenery. You could add, you know, foliage in here if you want, but I didn't want to add another colour. I like the fact that it was all those three analogous colours that we'd chosen to work with. So that one's just going to offset across that side there. And that's pretty much my card finished for the basics there. So focusing on the background, as I say, that shimmer in the background, I think this one's actually shown up better than the sample. There is some on the sample there, but not quite as pronounced. I don't think I waited as long for this one to dry, but the reaction on that one is absolutely gorgeous. And then, as always, it was like, right, I do want some extra gems on here, but I didn't want to go over the top with the gold. I thought if I start adding more gold, it's going to detract from the flowers. So again, I had a look through the gems and just came up with the clear ones this time. I just thought they take on the colour of what's underneath them anyway. So this is just the little clear dewdrops, which I've got sets of here. And all I've done is pop them on. So on the white, it's taking on the white, but where I've got it over the background, it's taking on the colour of the background. And again, just cascading across that sentiment, linking this side of that embellishment to that side and drawing your eye across the sentiment. Oh, and I forgot to do this little bit at the top. This was in the stamp set that I'd pulled out, and it is just a little tiny, like a harlequin stamp there. And I used the oxide, forgotten about that bit. I use the oxide here to just to over stamp on it, just to add that little bit of detail. And then where I've trimmed it down and we had these pieces left, I've just cropped that enough to fit inside. You can see we've just got a strip from there. You know, this one's got that wider piece, so I could have put a wider piece in, just using up those little oddments. Again, you could punch little tiny flowers out of these if you've got a paper punch. Don't throw the bits away, just punch them, keep them in a little box. I've got a little bit box that I have that I can go to, and it would make some beautiful flowers with that. I'll do that before I sort of tidy everything away. So yeah, that's my design today for Technique Tuesday. So the glycerin technique, using that basic glycerin that you find in your local chemist. So sometimes the supermarkets sell it, usually around where the cough medicines are. That's where I find it, where I normally buy it. And also that cling wrap technique, adding that beautiful sparkle. It's just gone very, very dark all of a sudden. I think we've got clouds come over. You can see that gorgeous veining in there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, give us a thumbs up for the video. It does help with the channel, and I'll be back very, very soon with my next tutorial for you. So enjoy your day. Bye for now.